Love or ambition? You can choose everything, but you can't keep it all. I didn't meet her at a networking event, not at a tech conference, not through anyone who could connect us. I met her on a quiet Wednesday afternoon when I ducked into a secondhand bookstore to wait out a short rain. She was already there like she belonged to that place long before I walked in. She had long, loose hair, wearing a gray knit hat. Nothing curated, nothing messy. She held a copy of Being and Tamino highlights, no underlines, just reading slowly, like she wasn't reading a book, but listening to someone she knew. I sat across from her. Neither of us spoke, but the room softened. At that point, I was already being mentioned in tech columns. I'd just sold my first small company, just signed a contract to develop a logistics platform for a mid-sized firm in Texas. I should have been somewhere more productive, at least, according to the planner I packed too tightly. But when the rain stopped, I didn't leave. I pulled a copy of The Myth of Sisyphus off the shelf and sat down like I'd meant to be there. Evelyn wasn't the kind of beautiful that turned heads, but she had a presence quiet, deliberate, and whole. Her eyes didn't shine, they listened. The kind of gaze that made you want to be honest, not because you were asked, but because you were allowed. I can't remember who spoke first. Maybe me, maybe her. But she asked, "Have you read Camus before?" And just like that, we talked until the bookstore owner flicked the lights to close. I went back a few days later, not for books, but for whatever it was that made that old wooden table feel like a place I'd known before. Evelyn was there too. She didn't ask why I returned. She didn't say why she did. We picked up the conversation like nothing had interrupted it. Those conversations became a second rhythm in my life. By day, team meetings, product demos, funding calls. By night, walking to that bookstore. Sometimes I found her, sometimes I didn't. But when I did, we'd talk about ethics in AI, existentialism, the boundaries of trust. Sometimes we just read in silence two different books, but somehow on the same page. Evelyn never asked me what I did for work, never asked about my income or which startup I ran. But when I told her, she listened like no one else ever had. Not because she was impressed, but because she was curious. I used to think love arrived in flashes, lightning, fire, something undeniable. But Evelyn came in slowly like warm steam slipping through an open window. By the time I realized I didn't want her to leave, she had already become a part of me. There was no defining moment, no declarations, not even a held hand, but I was in love. We once talked about death, not darkly, just honestly. She told me her father once, a kind, struggling psychologist, died of cancer when she was still in high school. Since then, she said, she'd ask herself every night, if today was the last one, was I honest enough? I didn't know what to say. I wasn't dishonest, but I didn't ask myself things like that. Every day, for me, was about building, not ending. But those conversations started to unseat something in me. Not about her, about me. About why I was doing the things I was doing. About the user value I kept writing into pitch decks. Was it really about helping people or just the language of scalable fundraising? I believed I could keep Evelyn without changing anything. That she'd understand. That she'd wait. Because she knew I was building something meaningful. But I forgot something. Understanding isn't a substitute for presence. And I was always only halfway there. She never complained. never questioned my schedule, never played games. She just started showing up less. And one night, after I was 40 minutes late stuck in a pitch session with an investor, I found a handwritten note on the table. "You have everything. I'm just not sure you're ready to face yourself." No name, but I knew. I returned 3 more times. She didn't. I sent a message. No reply. I didn't call. Didn't go to her place. Not because I was proud or angry, but because I didn't know if what I wanted back was her or just the part of me that didn't feel empty around her. In another version of life, maybe I would have chased her. But in that moment, I kept running. More contracts, more meetings, more people. The world still wanted me, and I still answered. But some nights, when the rain hits just right like it did the day I met her, I remember her gaze, the quietest one that ever made me want to be real. I used to believe I could hold everything without losing anything. I thought I could do it all. Hold the work, hold the vision, hold the momentum, hold the love. Just a matter of planning, a little more effort. Once the product stabilized, once the team grew, once I could delegate, there'd be time for her, for us. I was never dishonest with Evelyn, but I was never truly present either. And absence, quiet, consistent absence, sees its own form of goodbye. I believed love would wait, that the right person would understand, that if they really cared, they'd hold that space for you to return. Evelyn never asked me to choose, which is exactly why I thought she'd stay. Some nights, I'd meet her after working 12 hours straight. I'd sit across from her, nodding on cue, while my head raced through unfinished spreadsheets, unsent emails. She knew. She always knew. And still she spoke gently, as if whatever part of me was left deserved to be heard. I took her grace as acceptance, but grace is often what people give when they've already let go. She never said, "You're not here," but her eyes did. I thought I was multitasking. What I was really doing was dividing, until I didn't belong anywhere fully. I thought building a future was the best way to love someone. But Evelyn never asked for a future. She just wanted a present I couldn't fully offer. When you're in the current, everything feels urgent. Every pitch, every call, every launch. You start treating the people you love like they're on the other side of your goals. But real people live in days, not in some days. There was one night I remember clearly. We sat on her floor, eating cold noodles. We didn't say much. It wasn't awkward, but it wasn't peaceful either. I looked at her and knew she's leaving. Not because she wanted to, but because I gave her no way to stay. I used to think love could wait, that it would keep its shape while I chased everything else. But love breathes. It walks. And if you're not walking with it, you're being left behind. Back then, I believed in the myth of ambition. That rest was laziness. That love was a reward, not a foundation. I never imagined love might be what teaches you what's worth building in the first place. Evelyn didn't leave all at once. She pulled away quietly, not out of anger, but to protect what little of herself she hadn't already given. I never told her I admired her stillness, the way she looked at me, the way she asked not for answers, but for honesty. She didn't care if I was right. She cared if I was real, and that terrified me. There's a kind of loss that doesn't come from goodbye but from unraveling, from watching something beautiful slip away and doing nothing, not because you didn't care, but because you didn't know how to hold love and momentum at the same time. I still remember how she tilted her head when asking a hard question, not to challenge you, but to invite you. She didn't need you to be certain. She just wanted to know how far you dared to think. I was young, hungry, certain I could bend the world before it bent me. But love doesn't work like conquest. It works like surrender. And I hadn't learned how to let go yet. Funny, isn't it? Someone can be close to your heart and still too far from your calendar. Evelyn was near, but I was always rushing. And love doesn't live in rush. I used to believe I could hold everything without losing anything. But the truth is, when you say yes to everything, you're always saying no to something. And sometimes, that something is someone. When she quietly walked away, she didn't disappear all at once. No slamming doors, no late-night fights, no dramatic goodbyes in the rain, no blame, no visible tears. Evelyn left the way she entered, quietly, gracefully, without asking for attention. At first, I stopped seeing her at the usual spots: the bookstore, the corner bench, the stairwell behind the library. Then she was just gone. I noticed it before I admitted it. But instead of reaching out, I leaned back. Not because I didn't care, but because I didn't know how to begin keeping her. Some relationships don't break with loud endings. They erode with silence, with moments missed, with words left unsaid, with dinners canceled and texts answered too late. I still remember our last long conversation. We were sitting on the back steps of the library. She spoke about a Rilke poem she loved. I nodded, but my mind was already in a meeting scheduled 20 minutes later. She looked at me when she finished, not accusing, just waiting to see if I was there. I wasn't faking her, and she knew. The next day, I went to the bookstore. She didn't come. I returned the day after. Still nothing. On the third visit, I found a note on our table. Just one sentence written in deep brown ink. You have everything. I'm just not sure you're ready to face yourself. No signature. No goodbye. Just that quiet truth, staring back. I folded the note, put it in my wallet, and never told anyone about it. I didn't call, didn't text, didn't try to explain. Not because I let go, but because I feared she was right. Feared she hadn't abandoned me. She'd simply stepped aside to let me see myself clearly. Feared that if I chased after her, I'd be forced to change. And back then, I wasn't ready to change for anyone. I told myself, maybe in a few weeks, when things calm down, I'll reach out. I'll explain. We'll start again. But weeks passed, then months, and then never. I buried myself in work. No one around me knew I'd just lost something irreplaceable. I still smiled, still pitched, still closed deals. Only I knew. A quiet void had just opened. When people mentioned Evelyn, I'd say, we had great conversations for a while. That was it. As if she was a breeze that passed through a season. But in truth, she was the only one who ever asked me a question I couldn't answer. Not a question about market strategy, or revenue models, or user engagement, but something simple. Are you still yourself? And the part that hurt the most was that I didn't know. Some people stay a short while, but leave questions for a lifetime. She never got an answer, not because the question was too hard, but because it was too honest. And when something is too honest, we tend to turn away. I turned away from Evelyn, and in doing so, I lost her. Not because she wanted to leave, but because I refused to stop. What's strange is that long after she was gone, the questions stayed. They showed up in quiet moments, tucked between lines of pitch decks and progress reports, whispering under my own confidence. I remember her words not because they were eloquent, but because they were still. Evelyn didn't preach. She asked simple questions, impossible to answer right away. Like, what you're building, does it still matter if no one sees it? Or, have you ever been so busy you forgot what it feels like to be truly asked how you're doing? And once, so softly I nearly missed it. Do you remember who you were before you got good at this? At first, they floated past, but over time, they ran like background code, subtle, unnoticeable, until I sat still long enough to hear them. I started collecting our conversations, not with recordings, but in memory. And sometimes, I'd write them down in a leather notebook, the only analog thing I kept in a digital life. She once said, "Some things need to be written by hand to ever touch the heart." I laughed then. Now, I believe her. I've forgotten projects I worked on at 21, forgotten the names of first investors, but not Evelyn. And not because I loved her, but because she was the first to reach into the part of me I hadn't yet questioned. I used to think depth came after success, after stability, after the business scaled, but Evelyn didn't wait for later. She lived inwardly, as if her soul was her only real possession. And when I failed to protect mine, she refused to stay and carry the weight for both of us. Years later, I met women more brilliant, more beautiful, more bold. But none of them made me pause mid-answer and ask myself again. None of them made me listen to myself like she did. None made silence feel like presence instead of absence. She wasn't the ideal partner. She didn't make me feel safe. She made me feel uncertain. And that's why I began to wake up. I wasn't brave enough to hold on to her, but I wasn't cold enough to forget her either. Some people walk into your life not to stay, but to remind you that the most important questions won't come from teachers or mentors or family, but from a stranger sitting across from you, asking one thing that echoes for the rest of your life. If you had to choose between purpose and a woman who understands you, I never thought love and purpose could be at odds. I grew up believing that if you were good enough, focused enough, honest enough, you could have it all. Career, love, freedom, legacy. Not either or, but both and. But Evelyn taught me something different. Not through confrontation, but through quiet. She never asked me to choose. Not once. And that's exactly why I had to face the truth. I was the one choosing everything else before her. The hardest thing isn't saying no to someone. It's knowing they matter, knowing you're losing them, and still not stopping. She was the first person who ever made me feel small, Not in the humiliating way, but in the way that made me realize I didn't need to perform. I didn't need to be brilliant, didn't need to be prepared. I could be quiet, unfinished, uncertain, and she would still be there. She didn't ask to understand everything about me. She just asked for me to be present, and I couldn't be. That's what terrified me the most. I loved her, but I wasn't there. I wanted to keep her, but I always put something else first. I kept saying I'd make time when things settled, but things never settled because the thing I was chasing was always moving. I wasn't living a lie, but I was living like everything important could be delayed. Evelyn lived like truth was a daily act, not a future plan. Once she said, "You don't need to choose me over your purpose. But if you never stay long enough with anything, you'll never know what was truly worth it." I said nothing. I didn't argue, and I didn't stay. Back then, I thought I was strong for not letting emotion interrupt mission. Now I think I was weak for not slowing down for someone who saw me. My purpose didn't walk away. She did. Not all loss comes from being left. Sometimes it comes from never showing up. I used to think Evelyn left because I was busy. Too many meetings, too many deadlines, too much momentum, not the right time. But I see it differently now. She didn't walk away. I never walked close enough for her to stay. Love doesn't break because of one big mistake. It wears down slowly, through every maybe later, every dinner postponed, every conversation interrupted by a vibrating phone, every night I chose my spreadsheet over her presence. None of those moments were dramatic, but added up, they built a space so empty, she no longer recognized herself inside it. I left her to carry the weight of understanding alone, not because I meant to, but because I wasn't truly present to see she was slowly fading from it all. I always assumed I'd have the chance to return. Someday, when I was more settled, more clear, more worthy, I'd reach out, say the words I hadn't said, make it right. I treated love like a room I could walk back into whenever I remembered where the door was. But no one waits forever at a door that never opens. Time doesn't kill love. It just reveals who stopped to hold it and who walked on, unaware of what they were leaving behind. I was the one walking, and by the time I turned around, she was gone. She never blamed me, but her silence, that silence, it was the heaviest goodbye I've ever known. It didn't shout. It just wasn't there. And the absence spoke louder than any words ever could. I didn't stop because I didn't know I needed to. I thought love was flexible, that if it was real, it would keep pace. But Evelyn wasn't slowing down. She just realized I was never walking with her in the first place. In the spotlight, no one asks who you really are. After Evelyn left, I didn't fall apart. I did what the world expected from a young man fresh off his first acquisition. I kept going. I expanded my team. I attended conferences. I closed bigger deals. From the outside, I was thriving. But inside, something was missing. Quietly, deeply. Everyone I met looked at me with anticipation. They called me inspiring, wise beyond my years, a future leader of a new generation. They asked about growth metrics, about leadership structure, about scale. No one asked if I was okay. And worse, I stopped asking myself too. I started becoming a persona, not a person. A walking brand. I knew how to talk vision, how to fill a room, but in front of a mirror, my edges blurred. Not because I was faking it, but because I forgot how not to. One night after a keynote, an older founder clapped me on the shoulder and said, "You're young, and you already understand the market. That's rare." I smiled. I thanked him. Then I went back to my hotel room, stared at the ceiling for 2 hours, and didn't know what to write in my journal. Not because there was nothing to say, but because I didn't know who I was saying it to. Evelyn once told me, "You don't have to be brilliant to be honest. Real people don't need to prove they exist." I didn't understand that when she was still around. Now I do, because there's no one left to say it to me. Success didn't hurt. Loneliness did. And not the kind that comes from being alone. The kind that comes from being surrounded, but unseen. Known by name, but not by soul. I used to think strength was about standing tall, staying focused, not letting personal feelings interfere with purpose. But maybe what I was calling strength was just silence. A silence wrapped around a widening hole. I started fearing quiet nights, moments with no emails, no calendar invites, no one to reply to. Because in that stillness, the biggest question would return. Who am I when there's no role left to play? Evelyn wasn't around to ask it anymore, but she left me with something the spotlight could never erase. The memory of being seen, not for my vision, not for my pitch, but for my presence, not for what I had built, but for who I was, even when I wasn't finished. The most unforgettable ones are those who made you want to be better. I used to think what made someone unforgettable was time. That if you stayed long enough, shared enough, collected enough memories, you'd stay in someone's heart forever. But Evelyn didn't stay long. She didn't need to. Because in a handful of months, she planted questions in me that I'm still answering years later. She wasn't my first love. She wasn't the only person who ever made me feel something real. She wasn't even the one who pushed me hardest. But she was the first person who ever made me stop and ask, what exactly am I living for? No one else demanded honesty from me the way she did. No one else made me go quiet over a question as simple as, if one day everything you've built disappears, what's left inside you? At the time, I thought she was questioning me. Now I know she was helping me see how much I was questioning myself. I was afraid to answer, afraid that if I stripped away the mission, the company, the leadership, the voice, there might be nothing underneath. And somehow, Evelyn reached into that exact space. Some people you love because they make you happy. Some you remember because they stayed through the pain. But some, they pass through lightly, briefly, and still, they make you want to live more truthfully. Because in their presence, you realize you don't have to keep performing. And maybe you never should have been performing in the first place. I still keep fragments of our conversations, handwritten, in a plain, soft leather notebook. One page holds only one line. You may not have stayed, but what you stirred in me will. I don't know if I wrote it to her or to myself, maybe both. Years later, as life handed me bigger milestones, deeper losses, louder applause, I still thought of Evelyn. Not because I still loved her, but because she stood for something I didn't want to lose again. Something real, something unmarketable, something whole. She didn't teach me with words. She didn't hand me a philosophy. She just lived with enough quiet truth that it made anyone around her reflect, even the loudest ones, even me. Later, I understood. What makes someone irreplaceable isn't how long they stay, but how deeply they change you. By the time they leave, a quiet dimming of something deep inside. I kept living the same way after Evelyn left. Still woke early, still showed up on time, still hit every milestone. The company kept growing. More features launched. My name appeared in a few more write-ups. Investors began to introduce me with phrases like, "one to watch." Nothing on the outside was broken. In fact, I was doing everything right by every metric that mattered to people like me. But inside, something had faded. Not loudly, not tragically, just like a small light that had once glowed warm and steady, now dimmed and flickering, too subtle for anyone else to notice. Even me. I didn't feel excitement when a new deal closed. I smiled when praised, but didn't feel pride. I heard my team report exceeding expectations. I nodded, as if that were normal. I wasn't cold. I had just started losing access to feeling. One night, I was invited to dinner with the partners of a major VC fund. Elegant setting, soft lighting, expensive wine. They asked about my 3-year vision, about IPO potential, about international expansion. I answered confidently, strategically. Everyone nodded. Everyone was impressed. Except me. In the bathroom afterward, I stared into the mirror and asked, why do I feel nothing? There was no major collapse. No breaking point. Just this slow, invisible drift, each day pulling me a little further from myself. And I didn't know how to return. Worse, I wasn't sure when I'd left. When Evelyn was around, even for just a few hours a week, some part of me felt anchored. But after she was gone, I became a closed-loop system. Efficient, accurate, but numb. I didn't hurt. I just couldn't see clearly anymore. Success kept coming. So did invitations. So did new faces. But I, the version of me who once wanted everything for a reason, now just saw it all as a checklist. I lived, not because I wanted to, but because I didn't know why I would stop. Some people pass through and stay forever. Evelyn never came back, and I never tried to find her again. Not because I forgot, and not because I stopped caring, but because I knew when someone chooses to leave quietly, with respect, the only thing left to do is honor that silence. Years later, when the noise around me grew louder, when headlines used my name without a need for introduction, I still thought of her, not with longing, but with stillness, like a candle long extinguished, but whose scent still lingered in the room. She left me nothing tangible, no letters, no photos, no gifts. And yet, you don't need artifacts to remember someone like her. One conversation, one gaze held too long, one question you never forget how to ask. That's enough. I've had longer loves, more dramatic ones, relationships that lasted years, but none stayed inside me the way Evelyn did. Not because she tried, but because she never took space. So she never had to be erased. She stayed the way a question stays. Not demanding, just unfinished. I didn't build anything in her name. Didn't write about her in my journals. Didn't mention her in interviews. I held her the way you hold a melody with no lyrics. Not sung aloud, but always playing quietly when the world turns off. She was the only woman I ever loved without a plan. No thoughts of marriage, no dream house, no shared future, just the wish that she'd remain somewhere in the background, enough to keep me tethered to the part of myself I feared losing most. Some people come to walk beside you. Some come to teach. Some come to test. And then there's one who appears only to remind you, don't forget who you were before the world started clapping.
I don't know much about Evelyn. My father never said her name. He never called her an old flame or a first love. Just once, when I asked him, was there ever someone who didn't leave because they were angry, but because they respected you enough not to stay? He nodded. Didn't say a word. But I knew it was her. I grew up in a family that had lost almost everything and slowly rebuilt it again. Love, career, reputation, faith. But the one thing that never returned was the look in the eyes of someone who once saw you clearly and quietly walked away. To my father, Evelyn wasn't just a person from the past. She was a symbol of something real, something clean, something he never wanted to lose again. Not the relationship, but the part of himself that had been seen and had once responded. We all meet many people in life, but sometimes one person walks through and leaves you face to face with yourself. That's the one who stays the longest, even if they're no longer around. Hello everyone, I'm Lily, the youngest daughter of Victor Dominic. My father shared these stories, not to be remembered, but to remind us. Everyone deserves a new beginning, even the broken ones. Some names and places have been changed for privacy, but Free Your Soul is real, and it's the most precious legacy he left us. Today, I'm sharing it with you, hoping it reaches someone who needs a quiet, gentle whisper. Thank you for listening with your heart. I'll see you in the next stories.